Hey, let's go ahead and get started. So hello, everybody. Welcome to Ask the Grant Writing Expert. I'm Dr. Meg Bouvier. You know me as the creator of your library of NIH grantsmanship courses. I have over 35 years of experience as an NIH grantee, intramural researcher, staff writer, and now as a full-time grant editor and mentor. And I've helped clients land over $500 million in federal funding, and I'm here to answer your questions today. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. So a reminder that if you're attending live, you're in listen-only mode. You can put your questions in the Q&A box at any time. If there's anything you want to share about any of the topics we're discussing, you can put that in the chat box. And if you're watching this as a recording, just remember that things change quickly at NIH, so you should always check to make sure that any information we give you is still accurate. So in terms of what you should be watching in the library right now, it's early May. So if you're submitting for a Cycle 2 deadline, my guess is probably that you would be watching parts 3 and 4 of Master the Art series, which have to do with writing the significance and innovation sections and writing the approach section, and maybe looking at things like the human subjects form course and mistakes commonly made on NIH applications. Those would probably be your best bet. In terms of news coming out of NIH, I think the hottest piece of news coming out is that, not surprisingly, NIH is ending its pandemic era policy concerning post-submission material. So for those of you who don't know, post-submission material is a type of information that you can update to your application in a window of time from submission to 30 days before the study section meets. And during the pandemic, NIH allowed preliminary data to go in as post-submission material, which is not typical. They are ending that policy. That's the bad news. The good news is that that policy will become permanent for R01, R21, and R03, assuming that you're applying to a NOFO that allows post-submission material, but most of them do, including the parent announcements. So that's great news. So today it is my great pleasure to have my colleague, David Widmer, joining us today. I've been working with David for years and years. He is a trusted colleague and usually the very first person I email when there's anything amiss, you know, like a plummet in the NCI K08 funding lines, and I want to check things out. And he's a friend and just very knowledgeable about all things NIH. And I am beyond delighted to have him as a guest today. So David, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then David will introduce a tutorial topic for us, and then we'll take questions.
Okay, let me share my screen a bit and get these slides up here so that you know what I'm going to be talking about, which is program officers. But as Meg said, thank you, Meg, for the invitation. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited about it. And to all the researchers who are attending, like you and Meg, I was a researcher in behavioral and molecular neuroscience for my part. And like you all, I was a grant applicant and then I hope grant awardee. And after I left the lab about 20 years ago, I became a senior grants manager at a cancer center. I then moved to manage the pre-award office, and then saw a gap that in 2009 was relatively new, which was to have a research development team to support our faculty in identifying opportunities and increasing application fundability. And recently I just started my own consulting firm on research development strategies, best practices, and the like. And today I'm going to share you one of those best practices that Meg knows very well, which is the importance of reaching out to a program officer at NIH, and why that's a must for increasing your chances of funding. So let's get started there. When I started, this was my understanding of science. If you have amazing science, then you get funding, in this case from NIH, and you're allowed to do more amazing science. Unfortunately, when I started, I realized that there's all of this happening, and we were kind of forced to understand this, and you're all in that bucket now. This is what you're facing. It's not that simple line. There's a lot of learning and reading and researching as to the best requirements, what you need to do, but the best how to do it wasn't very clear. And I was very lucky to reach out and work with experienced people and learn from them. And that's why you're here, and that's why you're following Meg's courses. But another person to reach out to is the program officer in the case of NIH. For other sponsors, there's usually a scientific officer, but we're going to focus on NIH today. So that's a big first step, and it really is something that you should think of as a requirement. Now, there are all these questions that you may understand are coming up as you're prepping for your submission. Some of these you can dig into yourself. Of course, you need to decide the sponsor, and we have all decided that NIH is the one, but you would do the same type of stuff for most other sponsors too. Where are we going? Understanding what the sponsor is looking for, in this case, institutes and centers at NIH, because each of them have different missions and priorities. What is the mechanism? Does this mechanism require preliminary aims, preliminary data, sorry? What is the budget? What budget do I need? When do I need the award? What deadline will I be ready for? All those things. Some of these you can figure out on your own, of course. Some of them you can talk to colleagues and other researchers about. But some you really should go to the source. And that source is the program officer at NIH. So who are they? Program officers are the primary points of contact between you, the grantee, the scientific community as a whole, and NIH. And they are extremely important for a number of reasons. One of them is that they are the ones who are embedded in the sponsor. In this case, in IC, they're working with funding opportunities, they're writing a number of them, and they're certainly understanding much, much closer on the ground what the mission and priorities of their own grant portfolio is, but also of the IC in question. How can POs help? So here's some of the things they can do. Provide useful feedback on a grant proposal. We want it to be compelling. That's something that goes into fundability. Advising on the research design. Here's something that I have. Is this really hitting what will excite the reviewers? Also, guiding you on the opportunity. We're doing some sort of due diligence in saying this one or this one might be the right opportunity, but they've written it. They really know what they're looking for. And then also insights into the workings at NIH. What happens when I submit the application? Where does it go to? What are the steps? And how can I anticipate, in this case, what the process of peer review will be for this particular study section? And you could actually, it's a federal and public job description, and you can search for a job description for an NIH-PO. And the top 10 responsibilities that are listed, 4 through 10 are here. You know, providing expertise, administration, attending the peer review meetings, and the like. But what are the top three? Interacting with you as the grantee, developing the concepts by understanding what you all are doing, which entails communication, and then also facilitating the grants by advising. So I found in the years of supporting faculty that this was something that was a new idea. As everybody became a new faculty member, I'm interested in submitting a grant. I can't really contact the PO. They're not going to want to talk to me. No, this is what they do. This is their job description. And here it is from the mouth of an NIH PO. They have to interact with the community, assess the research needs, develop the concepts, and then advise investigators. They want to have fundable grants be submitted. They need to enrich their portfolio and then report out to Congress about what they've done with the money, and they want your successful projects. But I also want to know, what am I doing? And I'm sure Meg has great guidance on this. I've seen some of the presentations. How do I do this? Well, do your homework first. Research top options for some of these things. What's the best IC? What are the best NOFOs? What are the best study sections? And choose a few options so that when you talk to the program officer, you can show you've done your due diligence. And then, who are the program officers? Who are the ones that are dealing with your particular type of research, and also are assigned to some of the opportunities that you've identified as the best ones to fit your needs? And then I would say email them, don't cold call them. You'll get a better response. Be succinct, and then provide your rationale. I chose this IC for this reason. Here are some study sections I chose for this reason. And you're giving them an opportunity to weigh it with advice, as you've already done some research. And then, you know, the extra bonus result that comes out of this is something you may not think about. This outreach throughout the life cycle of a particular application will help to establish trust. It'll actually possibly increase the chances of funding, and also you're creating mutual support. You're providing them with cutting edge science information, and they need that to understand what is happening in science so that they can say, okay, this fits with our mission, with our priorities. And then that comment at the bottom, this will enhance your own grant skills. You're talking to an expert. Just like it was very wise to come to Meg, it's also very wise to come to a content owner who has these types of items to provide you. So with that, a little short thing, I'm going to just end with this, and then I look forward to taking whatever questions are coming in, Meg.
So I'm just going to add that I'm thrilled that this was the topic that you wanted to present on, because I really feel like if there's one thing that people take away from my courses, if they only take one thing away from all of those hours of Master the R Series course, it's contact the PO early and often. It really, you know, I've been doing this full time since 2007. Nothing will move the needle on your chances for funding like having an active relationship with your program officer.
Yeah. And we
So-
don't want to, I also want to make it clear, that's not the only time to contact them. When you get your review statement, contact them. When you're going to resubmit as well, keep them in the loop.
Yeah, and if you get funded, don't just put in your annual progress reports. Pick up the phone and just talk to them about the project and how it's going.
Mhm.
So David, let's stop the screen share so people can see us, and then we'll start to take some questions. So here's a question related to, and again, I see some a few more people have logged on. Feel free to start typing questions in the Q&A. It doesn't necessarily have to be on this topic. It can be on any topic. So the first question, David, is about what you just presented on. If you contact more than one PO, do you contact them at the same time and CC them together on the same email, or do you reach out, say, to two POs separately and then go forward with whichever seems like the best fit? Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, sure. That is a great question. And I'm glad you asked it, because there's nothing wrong with contacting multiple program officers to clarify which perhaps NOFO works, or whatever you're asking those individual ones, ICs or opportunities. I would suggest, for a number of reasons, not just sending the same email to both of them. And the reason is because you want to tailor it to that grant portfolio, to that opportunity. You're asking them, here are some of the ideas I have. Does this fit in with what you are looking for, or with what your IC is looking for? Or so they're very specific to the person that you're reaching out to. And it's totally fine to tell them, I also reached out to NCI, you're at NIAID, and I'm checking both. That's fine.
Yeah, I would say that if there is overlap in the portfolio among 2 or 3 different program officers, they know each other, even if they're at different institutes. And I agree. I think it's probably a good idea to send, rather than shotgunning it, send a separate customized email to each one that's a little specific. But then let them know I've also shopped this to this other person, because I'm trying to sort out what's the best fit. I also want to say, sometimes I have applicants really get hung up on trying to identify the perfect program officer. So specifically at NCI, where there is a cast of thousands to whom you could send your email. And what I would say to that is, don't spin your wheels like that. Just get an email off to somebody who seems like a relatively good fit. And if it's not the exact right person, they'll forward it to the exact right person. So all the program officers, they know the other program officers in the institute. They tend to have their offices on the same hallway. So, and they go to the same meetings and they have lunch together.
And Meg, I can say that that's so. I went down to Bethesda to see some people, and it was like, okay, I'm here, and everybody pops out of their offices all in a row.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But even if it's a program officer who has overlap with another PO at another institute, they'll know each other as well. So just do your best to pick one and send the email, and they'll take it from there. Okay, so we have another one, and this is an NCI question. So David, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on this. If you have had an A1 application that had an unfundable score, 43 at NCI, and there's a new NOSI just on your topic, and you talk to the program officer and they are very encouraging, would you go ahead and submit, or would you wait to correct some of the criticisms from the A1, like needing a joint publication? Do you have an opinion on that, David?
Yes, I can tell you what most of the faculty did there, which is there is a draw to having a NOSI that's specifically speaking to you, and you really talking to the PO in this case would be super important. For the one that got a poor score, they were at that study section. They can't speak, but they can tell you some of the items that they heard of concern in general, and you can talk to them and get an idea what is better. Usually it's better to go to the specific RFA because they're looking for your particular science. Is that something you would concur with, Meg?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. And I meant to address this because I got this question I've been getting this question a lot about what a NOSI is. So, a NOSI is a category of that is an area of funding emphasis. It might be for a single institute or many institutes. It might be for a single funding opportunity or for many. And there are NOSIs that list the parent R01. So for this particular person, her name is Amina. Is it an A1? Was the A1 for? It's possible that it was for a funding opportunity that's actually listed under the NOSI. So she's saying the NOSI came out after I submitted the A1. That's okay. So I would suggest several things here. I would say first, what was your funding opportunity announcement? Was it the parent R01, and is the parent listed under the NOSI? Because often there are many NOFOs that are listed under the NOSI. And I know we're throwing around a lot of acronyms here.
Yes.
So the NOSI, again, is a big category. And there could be many funding opportunities under it. So if it's listed under your NOSI, just put resubmit it and list the NOSI. But either way, even if you don't, let's say you put it in as an A0 and you list the NOSI, you can still incorporate the things that the reviewers asked for. Even though the new set of reviewers won't have access to the study section, use that to strengthen the application. And if they're saying you should have had a joint publication, maybe wait and have a joint publication because your new reviewers may want that as well.
And speaking of acronyms, I read that as NOFO. So if there is another opportunity that's specific, which would be most likely an RFA, then there's that balance. But for this, yes, if it is something that you can just tack on to an improved application, right?
Yeah. And she actually said the parent was listed under the NOSI, but the NOSI came out after the R01. The PO suggested that she submit in June, which is what I would say too. And I'm submitting a T32 on May 25th, so maybe don't submit in June.
Yeah.
Maybe work on your data tables for the T32. Yeah. Amina, what are you doing on this call? T32s, for people who don't know, are training grants, and the data tables are
massive.
brutal.
Yes.
Oh, they're brutal. So so you may want to wait until October 5th. But I think the take-home messages, and just so people know, a NOSI is not the same thing as a funding opportunity announcement. So the NOSI is a topic under which there are funding opportunity announcements. So when you put the submission in, like on your Ames page or your significance, you would list both the NOSI, the notice of special interest, which is the broad topic, and you would list the NOFO, the notice of funding opportunity. So anyway, so Amina, don't do yourself a favor and don't submit in June. If you're putting in a May 25th T32, submit it for October and put it in as an A0 under the parent under that NOSI.
And the U01 in July? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I have great people doing the data tables. We'll get the paper out and submit in October after we submit a U01 in July. So just so you know, I've known Amina for a long time. She brought me with her to her new organization when she moved from one academic medical center to another. She's a powerhouse. So
clearly.
Yes. So do we have other questions? Let's see, we have 5 more minutes. So if anybody would like to submit any other questions, feel free to do that. So I will say one of the things that David has really impressed upon me is the benefit of talking about case studies. And one of the things that I wanted to add, I opened this session by talking about this new post-submission material policy. And twice this week, I've advised grantees concerning future post-submission material where they were planning to submit preliminary data under the post-submission material mechanism. Recently, I have heard from applicants who have gone through review that they have some concerns that reviewers are missing material that's coming in as post-submission material. And one of the things that I'm suggesting as a workaround for that, and I don't, this is hot off the presses, I'm just like making this up as I go along, but I think it's going to work, is that they put when they're writing up their preliminary data in the approach section, they say, so for example, somebody I spoke with today who's actually on the call, say something like, yes, we're submitting for mid-June. And while our recruitment numbers are not high as of submission, we plan to actively recruit all summer and submit an update to that via the post-submission material mechanism. So you're not promising anything. You're not promising to hit any recruitment numbers in the months after submission, but what you're doing is alerting reviewers to the fact that they should go look at that update in the post-submission material. So, and we do have one more question. Amina just said, you're totally right, though. The PO for this NOSI happens to be the PO for my second R01. So the relationship is there. Yeah, so this is another person who's saying that the program officer is hugely important.
Mhm.
So we have time for, I think, one last question. I spoke with the PO for my project and she suggested an R34. Do I need to have preliminary data and publications with team members? I'm not familiar with the R34. So Jenny, I'm assuming that you're talking about using an R34 as a clinical trial planning grant, which is the most common way that the R34 is used. And so for those who don't know, the R34, there is no more apparent R34 mechanism. David and I will remember when there was. Now they're issued in an institute-specific NOFOs, and they're most commonly used as a clinical trial planning grant. So David, in your experience, what do you think? Does she need preliminary data and publications with team members on that?
So I'm not able to speak to that at my prior institution because we hardly ever did those. But to my understanding, there needs to be some preliminary data to show the feasibility.
Yes, exactly right. This is typically there are 300,000 K in directs over 3 years. I've seen them as high as 600, but that's pretty unusual. And no federal fund, no funder anywhere is going to give you $300,000 without preliminary data. It's not going to happen. So the goal with it is to show, I mean, you don't have to have an avalanche of data. It's not an R01. And actually, it's considered a pathway to the R01. So you're trying to gather whatever you need to inform the design of the full-scale interventional trial at the R01 level. But for sure, you are going to have preliminary data. And yes, some publications with at least some team members would be helpful.
That's what I was going to ask. Okay.
Yeah. And we have 1 minute. So what is the best way to contact the program officer? Go ahead, David.
So, I mean, from my point of view, in email, and as I was mentioning, so if I'm talking to you in an email, here are some top options that I have, so that I'm asking the person this or this. If you're asking them, find me a study section, find me a NOFO, no, you want to show that you did some work, and then ask for a call where you can detail out much more.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. So email first, and In the email, you don't want to ask your questions because they'll answer via email and you'll always get more information on the phone. But do indicate that you've done your due diligence and say, I would like to have a brief discussion at your earliest convenience to discuss the relative merits of 2 study sections that I am considering, and don't name them. So email first to try to, and also I think it can be helpful to indicate time sensitivity in the subject line because, I mean, David, it's May 3rd and my inbox has hundreds of emails in it. And so do the program officers. Like, this is the hot time. This is the season. And they're inundated with questions. So, if it's May and you have a question for an application that's due in early June, say that in capital letters in the subject line of the email. If you're asking about an October submission, wait till June. You're going to be much more likely to get an answer from an R01 program officer. But
yeah, once that deadline passes, yeah. And please, please, please don't reach out to people a week before the deadline. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Do it now.
Yeah, help them help you. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for our questions, and we're over time. And David, always a delight to spend time with you. And I hope that
thank you for the invite.
Yeah, you are just a wealth of information. I've learned so much from you. And I look forward to having you back on Ask the Grant Writing Expert.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good luck, everybody.
Yeah, good luck. Take care. Bye-bye.